1. I used to work in the automotive industry, and started as a co-op student and worked up to be a contract quality engineer. I spent almost 5 years there before having to find new work. I had been there in co-op for 2 years and been given the opportunity for a contract even though I wasn't done at school. My old boss and new boss liked that I was a dedicated employee and had a great work ethic. I had a great reputation with the engineering team, and though I had made some mistakes, the floor staff trusted me. During my second year on contract, I worked with a truck manufacturer that we made some parts for, and I had been their contact person for issues and testing requests. One day, this manufacturer had a part fail catastrophically. They called our head office and threatened us with a recall. It was all hands on deck. I went out to my customer and took care of them. It was a complete clusterfuck for about 6 weeks, but we solved the problem. My customer had high praises for me and wanted to make sure that I was going to manage their account for the future. Fast forward to the 4 months before I leave. The company gets sold, and my contract is now going to be my last with them, as new owners want to bring in their own team. I talked to my boss, but he is in a hiring freeze until the next fiscal year. So I'm now in a tough spot, but I work through it. Due to me being a recent graduate and a contract, the new owners don't feel it's necessary to train my replacement. I have a single meeting with the new executive team and explain to them all the things us quality engineers provide to our customers. I get told the following.
Why would we offer such services for free? We need to make money. And if this doesn't make money, then we don't need it.
I agree that we should make money, but good customer service has given us a lot of contacts that otherwise would have been sent elsewhere.
Let us decide how we manage. You just need to make sure the parts are good.
Okay then. I take this time to decide that I am now going to work whistle to whistle and only do what is in my job description. Because I am now just working my normal 40, there are tasks that would usually get done by me after hours that start to slip. By the time I leave, all of my normal extras I do are now in complete disrepair. I thank my boss for his support and my former boss before packing my desk. My last day was just before Christmas, too. Over the next month, my boss calls me and asks if I would come back. After my experience with the executive team, I respectfully declined. After another month, I get a call from the executive team asking for me to come back. Again, I declined, but I ask why such a request.
Well, one of our customers has become unsatisfied by our new service, and we need some help to get it back on track.
Oh, so my customer, who I explained wanted a good level of customer service, is now upset. For context, they are about 50% of our total business.
Look, will you help us or not?
I will for 2 weeks at engineering rate. That's $120 an hour.
Absolutely not. You can have your old contract renewed with a 50-cent an hour raise.
No, thank you. I hang up. I reach out to an old friend a few months later and find out that they lost my customer and are now struggling to keep their other customers. I guess good customer service can be the difference. 2. I love taking photos of people, to the point that I have 2 resumes for applying for jobs, and one of them is specifically for photography work. So I was psyched when I got a job in a photo studio. It was a chain, and it wasn't like high-quality work, but it was still awesome. I took a lot of photos of very cute babies in particular. Well, the company had a 3-strike policy. Once there were 3 strikes with you, you were gone. They made you sign off on every single one of the reports. It didn't matter how much later it was that you got your next strike, they never went away. Okay. Doesn't seem like a great business model, but okay. And being fair, I did get 2 strikes which were very reasonable. One day I missed work because I forgot to set an alarm. It was a super irregular schedule, and it wasn't always easy to keep track of. Mea culpa. The next strike happened because I scheduled a photo shoot for being before the beginning of a shift accidentally. The program was supposed to only show you times that an employee would be available for doing photo shoots, and they changed our hours with very little warning. So the photo shoot that I had scheduled the week before that would have been within our hours was no longer. I felt super bad for the mom and daughter who came in early for their photos and helped them sort everything out with a free photo redemption and apology. I still got my second strike for that. Now, the last strike. I actually got 2 in the same day. Around Christmas, our store goes nuts. We have twice as many people working in order to keep everything in order. During that, I was training a new employee and helping their photo shoots and my own and running cash and taking passport photos and teaching her the rules for them and blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. It was a nightmare. What made it sound worse is that one customer submitted 2 complaints that day about me. See, this customer felt I was pushing her to buy photos. Literally all this company cares about is pushing the photo packages, and I was instructed to do it relentlessly with more and more energy because I didn't make enough people feel like they had to have them. So great. I convinced the customer to spend money, instead of just giving them free things and not getting $1 from them, like the company was always yelling at me to do. And I got a complaint for that. Great. And then the other complaint was even more ludicrous. The customer felt I was being too bossy with the other photographer. The one that I was training. The one that didn't know how to do the job yet, so I had to tell her how to do things. Apparently I deserved to be fired for telling her how to do things. I was heartbroken. It's been a few years now, so I've gotten over it, but I was so happy working as a photographer. But here's where the malicious compliance finally kicks in. See, by my nature, I end up doing a lot of work that isn't actually my job because I want to help. I enjoy being useful. But they're firing me because they don't want me to sell things or train people like they had told me to do. So for the last 2 weeks of my job, I stopped counting all of the money for deposits. That was the manager's job, even though she hadn't done it in half a year since making me do it. This meant she had to come in on days that she didn't work just to do the deposit. I stopped actively recruiting customers, which is what you're supposed to do in your downtime. Cold call previous customers and prowl around the attached mall for people you can convince to get photos. The best tactic was always to find people with new young ones, tell them how beautiful their baby is, offer them a free print of one of their photos after the shoot. Almost no one passes that up because then they have a wonderful photo to hold on to. I didn't feel guilty doing it because it genuinely makes people happy. I stopped taking meticulous notes of every interaction that was worth following up on. I used to make a note for the next shift about how X customer had seemed interested but was unconvinced, and that a simple reminder of the offer would probably be enough to get them to buy. Or I could make a note about someone who forgot their passport photos and whether or not they had paid already. And then on my last day, the truest malicious compliance happened. They wanted me gone. Okay. I took my name tag and packed it away. I went into the photo studio and grabbed the kids' toys I had brought in to help get young ones to cooperate. Babies don't really understand a stranger saying smile for the camera. But if you shake a rattle at them and make silly faces, they're very good at smiling for that. I cleaned up all of the things I had laid out neatly for easy preparation, and put them in the back storage. I cleaned up the counters to get rid of all the notes and passport photos that weren't claimed that day because that was what we were technically supposed to do. And then, over my 9 months working there, a number of issues had come up with the things that we worked with. For the passport photos, we needed a paper trimmer to slice off the edges quickly and neatly. We had one when I started, and then it broke. I brought in a replacement. It got broken too. Still, we needed one, so I brought in another replacement. We'd also gotten our stapler stolen. No worries, I have one at home we can use. And the keys to the storage, the extra receipt paper, the passport paper, where we keep the deposits, where we keep our paper files. They were tiny, and the color of them was so bland that throughout the course of the day they would get lost easily 30 times. I had brought a large blue fluffy keychain to attach to it with permission from the boss. Never lost those keys again, not one of us. We had a sign when I started there, which we could pop out, which said, "I'm in a photo shoot, please be patient, I'll be with you in a moment," or something along those lines. Because there was only one employee at a time, and they had to do the photo shoots and all the passport photo drop-ins. Well, my boss accidentally dumped her coffee on that sign after she tripped one day. So I went out of the way to get a new one printed, bought a plastic sleeve for it, and set it up with a cardboard backing so it wouldn't break or get ruined. It was better than the old one. So of course when I left, I took my sign, my keychains, my paper trimmer, my stapler, my toys, and notably, my shutter button. See, the camera had a shutter button attached that would allow you to move about while snapping photos. Again, help the little ones because they don't understand directions, so you have to be able to physically draw their attention somewhere. This cord had gotten frayed and not replaced. It shocked me nasty enough to leave a burn, so I took it off the camera and brought my own in. I got a call the next day asking how dare I steal the company's supplies. I calmly replied that I had just taken back the items that belonged to me, and that they could keep the broken paper trimmer that I had brought in. I even left them a pair of scissors I brought for a backup when the first paper cutter broke. I even brought them a box of paper clips for using since they didn't have a stapler anymore. The store closed down not a month or two later. Crazy how when you fire your hardest worker over things that you told them to do, and one misshift, mea culpa, other employees are less than enthused about the chance of the same thing happening, and no one else worked nearly as hard to keep everything in the black as I did. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, I liked everyone, except the manager, since it was only 2 other employees, and they did their work well and treated me nicely. They just had a better sense of doing what they were paid for, and nothing else. And for reference, the employee who the customer felt I was treating badly looked at her manager like she was insane and asked when I had done that because she knew for a fact that the only time I raised my voice at either herself or the only other employee was because it was too loud for them to hear me otherwise. She apologized to me, said that she was worried it was her fault because she had been a little nervous that day because she was dealing with other things, and was worried that the customer had gotten the wrong impression because of that. Said employee then went on to have her own gallery show, leaving shortly after I was fired. Now, there may be some questions about why I worked 2 weeks after being fired. Simply enough, there was no one to cover my shifts. One employee was in China celebrating New Year's with her grandparents, one was working on her own photos, which became her gallery show, and the manager would be very, very over 40 hours if she worked my shifts too. And I needed the money and wanted to say goodbye to some of the kids whose parents who I took photos of every month. Relatively common, a lot of them wanted photos of their babies as they grew and changed. Though this has reminded me of one sweet thing they told me. One of the families said they wouldn't be rebooking next month then because no one else had gotten their kid to take such nice photos. It felt awesome. It's been 6 years, so I had forgotten about that. And another torturous tidbit about this company, they kept every studio temperature the same as corporate. Corporate was in a very different climate area. It was almost always either meltingly hot summer or freezing cold in winter. It has been brought to my attention that the shutter release cord did not have enough power to do that much damage. It has been suggested that the issue might actually have been with the flash setup in the studio. That's probably right, that I was just completing the circuit. All I know was that it hurt like a bitch, and that it stopped happening after the cord was replaced. Now it seems likely that it just stopped happening because I was no longer in contact with another good conductor like metal. 3. After working at a toxic office job for a few years, I decided it was time for me to leave. I gave a more than 2-week notice and started to organize my myriad of tasks to hand off. I was an accounts payable assistant, and the company had created my position and added various tasks with other departments over the years. I helped with accounting, inventory audits, customer service, marketing, sales, and events. My primary manager, Barb, was the accounting manager, and there was always a struggle because she assigned the extra work to me, but then refused to acknowledge that I did jobs for other departments than hers. She was the primary reason for me leaving. Every day I ask her if we can have a meeting to discuss my different tasks, how I've organized them and how to complete them, as no one else does these tasks in the company but me. She refuses to meet with me and demands me to keep up with deadlines. No problem. For the next 2 weeks, Barb doesn't remove a single task from my plate. She refuses to meet with me for any reason and consistently sends condescending emails about the lack of work effort she's seeing from me. I don't have the emails saved anymore, but they all included the same message. I'm the boss, just do your job. I brought this to the owner's attention since I worked closely with her, about how I felt like there was no bridge to the next person in my position. I was told, Barb runs the accounting department, do what she says. Yes, ma'am. I showed up every day and worked as if I wasn't leaving. Other managers asked me who was taking over the tasks I handled for them. I referred them to Barb, who told them she handled accounting, not their departments, and to stop wasting her time. She then told me to only work on accounting-related tasks, as that was position, regardless of the last few years of my tasks being spread across the company. I got this in writing and printed a few copies to cover myself. On my last day, Barb called me into her office and scolded me for ignoring 75% of my duties. Specifically, inventory was due that day and I hadn't begun it. I reminded her of her accounting work-only demand, which she claimed wasn't referring to inventory too. She told me to complete a list of all the non-accounting jobs I handled, to which I was prepared with a list. Many of these had deadlines missed or coming soon, but I had ignored as per her instructions. I was told that if I didn't meet my deadlines for the week, she would not give me a good reference. She also told me to stay as late as you needed to finish up. I didn't need her reference, and I wasn't leaving late on my last day. I forwarded the email of her telling me not to complete any other jobs to the owner, along with a list of missed or closed deadlines that wouldn't be met now. Then I clocked out and left, and never returned. This was years ago, and from what I've heard, she still runs the accounting department for them. I was blamed for the tasks not being complete. Oh well. 4. This happened several years ago, because it was some malicious compliance that lasted for years. My former employer uses a points-based system to track attendance. The parts of the policy relevant to this story are: tardy with call in prior to the start of the shift, half point. Tardy with no call, 1 point. Accumulate enough points, and you're fired. There's a set of train tracks crossing the street that leads to this facility. Occasionally, trains will stop while blocking this crossing. If you're caught there in the last few minutes before you're supposed to clock in, you have a decision to make: wait or go around. Either way, you might be late. Sometimes you'll decide to go around and then the train clears the crossing and the folks who waited get in before you. Sometimes you'll wait and watch through the gaps in the train cars as folks who went around pull into the parking lot while you're still idling at a blocked train crossing. To be clear, going around involves taking a lot of secondary country roads, as well as a few field access roads. It's an extremely rural area, so you literally never know what kind of road conditions you're going to find along the way around. The roads may even be entirely unusable during the winter months where snow covers them. One night during my years on third shift, I was stopped at the tracks and decided to wait. Eventually the train moved on. I raced into the parking lot, used my key card to zip through the turnstiles, and ran to the punch clock. My clock-in time was 10:30 p.m. They have these biometric punch clocks that read your fingerprint to clock employees in and out. Sometimes these clocks just will not read your fingerprint. I got to the punch clock and it said 10:30. I'm golden. It doesn't track seconds. I entered my employee ID number and placed my finger on the sensor. 3 beeps, failed read. Try it again, 3 beeps. Try it once more, 3 beeps. Nope. Not trying again, because this time the clock was likely to tick over to 10:31 in the middle of reading my finger. When I got to my assigned work area, I told my team manager what happened. He said don't worry about it, he'd manually punch me in. I should have listened, but I'm a worrier. In the morning, when the front office people started showing back up, I went to the attendance office to confirm that my situation was all good. The office administrator decided to check my gate time and use that as my determining factor. I scanned my keycard at 10:30 and 22 seconds p.m. That's a tardy, no call. 1 full attendance point to be issued. I reiterated that it was a train stopped on the tracks, completely beyond my control. She advised me to either leave earlier, and just wait an extra half hour for my shift to start on the majority of days, or else get a cell phone. I didn't have one back then to call in with from the road next time. Well, what I did instead was start calling in absent, just in case something comes up after I leave home but before I arrive at work, in the evenings before leaving for work. The first few days, the attendance office up front was just bemused. After weeks, they became annoyed. After months, they'd apparently complained enough that I finally got told to stop. During the course of this conversation, they revealed that calling in too early before the start of your shift made it extra challenging to make sure the notice gets to the right members of management, because the message is no longer flagged as new by the time they're creating logs for the next shift. This was great news for me. From then on, every morning before leaving the premises at the end of my shift, I use one of their phones to call in absent for my next shift that evening. They tried to write me up for insubordination, but the labor union slapped it down, pointing out that the collective bargaining agreement specifies the time we must call in by, but does not specify a time before which call-ins may not be made. Cue the huge grin across my face. I never forgot that my team manager tried to do me a solid, though. If I was actually going to be late or absent for some reason, I would call that TM's desk line directly to let them know. Even long after I got a cell phone, I continued doing this. I'd just call in on my way home, instead of sticking around to use their phones after my shift. Found out years and years later from some union reps that upper management never got over this, drove them nuts that they got beat at their own game by something so simple. It didn't bring the walls crumbling down, but it was a persistent, enduring source of frustration and impotence for them. And really, knowing you can manage all of that with just a 22-second phone call a day, that's the kind of thing that gets you out of bed in the evening. Just preemptively, some might be about to say that I should just have sucked it up and left for work earlier. I usually left early, so that I got to work before the 20 minutes prior to the start of our shifts that were allowed to clock in. This stopped train event was a rare and unpredictable exception, but the crossing was regularly blocked for a few to several minutes by a moving train. Not to mention all the other random stuff that could come up on your way to work. 5. This was quite a few years ago, but I used to do IT for a company that was suddenly experiencing rapid growth. This meant many new employees got new out-of-the-box computers, but it also meant it was hard to always be fully stocked. But the shipping was quick, and they basically ordered the exact amount of computers required to fill new employee needs. Employees before this obviously had computers that may be a couple years old. This story will feature one such employee. The employee in question is named XL. XL had noticed many of the newer employees were getting new computers, and he felt upset that he wasn't using one of these computers. It had actually been upgraded a year before, which was also before this rapid growth. So what was the upgrade? The year before, there was a budget to upgrade CAD workstation users to brand new ones. The company bought their equipment outright, so the former CAD workstations could be reused easily for non-CAD users. For those not familiar, these machines are often higher end and are used for high-end visual work, virtual machines, etc. Our company paid about $2,500 each for these. His was one of these repurposed machines. It was suddenly 2-ish years old and had 16 gigs of RAM, quad-core Xenon SSD, and a workstation video card that doesn't really benefit him. What was in the brand new computers people got? A dual-core CPU, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 500 gigabyte non-SSD drive. For those who are not computer savvy, SSD better. You can probably guess where this is going. How come most of my co-workers have a better computer than me? I think your computer seems fine, but if you're having performance issues, I could look at it. It doesn't run as quickly as my co-workers. Can you show me quickly what you're doing? He showed me, and he was pretty much inefficiently running his Excel, causing it to be bloaty with over-large file sizes considering it's Excel. He honestly should have had a few different Excel worksheets and files for this. This was more an Excel limitation back then than a hardware issue. I talked about this a bit, and he didn't want to listen. See? It's not running very well. I see that. Have you tried doing...
Yes, and it didn't work. Could I get an upgrade?
Honestly, your computer is likely better than your colleagues, so I don't think this is going to help Excel. Would you mind if I helped you optimize your files?
It's not going to work. I've tried. Can you give me a different computer? One like my coworkers have.
Sure, if your manager sends me an email that says this is vital to your work, I could have one ordered for you.
That would be good. I'll have them email you.
At this point, I thought it was done, and most won't bother their managers about this. If they do, most managers will almost never do this. I didn't want to downgrade the guy either, even though he was coming across arrogant. Unfortunately, I was wrong. I guess it was in his department's budget, or he was doing important work for the department. I already knew what was likely going to happen from this, so I immediately forwarded the email to my manager. I then promptly called my manager as well, then gave him a quick rundown. I told him this is probably going to come back later, since he's using Excel wrong and won't listen. Why didn't I just have his file used on another employee's computer to show him, you may ask? Privacy and confidentiality reasons. You're only supposed to use your assigned computer except in certain circumstances. So fast forward to him getting his new computer. He failed to back up his data, so I had to help him retrieve it. Also, how long did his new computer last after this before he was upset it wasn't working well, you may ask? 1 hour. Unfortunately, I was busy because, as I said, the company was growing fast and couldn't run to help over something with this type of priority. He can do his job, albeit not optimally, because of his Excel knowledge. I had him go through service desk knowing it's coming back to me eventually. He had to wait about 2 days. He begged for his other computer back. At this point, I was done playing this ridiculous game. This was taking way too much of my time, and I'm not swapping it again. Also, that computer was just billed to his department. I don't really want to unassign it and reassign his old one and have it back in the inventory pool for his department. Do you mind if I can actually test for a minute to see if I can fix your Excel first?
It's not going to do anything. I use this program every day. I know what I'm doing.
Okay, but I need to test because if I don't, my manager is going to ask me why I didn't before I swapped again. Note, my manager trusts me and doesn't care, but I need to make it clear this is a requirement, without creating a conflict such as him thinking I believe he's lying.
Sure, whatever. I'm going to grab a coffee.
Actually, can you grab a chair and stay for a couple minutes? I proceeded to quickly check the Excel file to avoid breaking references, and make this basically 10 megabyte, don't remember the exact size currently, 32-bit garbage Excel file into 5 different files. Honestly, these files are still pretty crap, but suddenly, Excel isn't hanging or freezing for often a minute or more anymore.
How did you do that? Is there a way you can combine the files for convenience?
I think you should keep the files separated. When a file gets too bloated, Excel struggles to handle them. At this point, half of his department is looking at us. I can tell a few are trying not to laugh. I think they kind of realized that this guy was kind of rude to me before and was the cause of his own issue.
Oh, well, okay, I guess.
I stand up, tell him to have a good day and leave. He didn't even say thanks. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 141. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Now, as we are not an army, as I think we've established, hippie commune, it would be really chill and relaxed and groovy if you folks could just take this here video and spread the love. Spread the love of Hellfreezer around, share it with friends, family, co-workers who are open to having things shared with them, with your pets, anyone who's able to access any sort of computer or cell phone or tablet, anything that can play streams from the YouTubes. Okay, let's see. We are on Sunday now. It's the 22nd. I don't think I have any shout-outs today. I think the next ones are June, or no, is it the end of the month? I don't think I have any today. So that takes us right to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today, Today we're all about sandwiches because I'm hungry as I record this. That's why a lot of these are food related. I get to the end of a recording session and I've worked up an appetite. So, what do you like to stick on a sandwich? What's your go-to? I don't really have like a favorite because I like lots and lots of sandwiches. But if I'm going sweet, my favorite is peanut butter, banana in the middle, then Nutella or some equivalent. There's one of my local grocery stores, Morrison's. They do a salted caramel chocolate one. It's really, really nice and it goes well with the peanut butter and everything. So that's my sweet sandwich. That's my favorite one. And one of my frequent cold sandwich go-tos would be an egg sandwich. Just like egg with like mayo or whatever, a little mustard in there, with lettuce and ham. That's a really nice go-to. I usually buy those instead of making them because when I'm making sandwiches at home, it's usually some sort of deli meat, cheese, lettuce, then maybe a little bit of dressing. That's my go-to. But my favorite cold ones is basically because I love a good egg, a good egg sandwich. Now, if I'm going hot, we're not going to get controversial. We're not going to say that hamburger is a sandwich. It is, but we're not going to get into that debate. Favorite hot sandwich for me is corned beef, right? Then lettuce. No, basically what it is it's a butter the bread. Then corned beef. When I'm talking about the UK corned beef, different from the US one, which in the UK is salt beef. Just to add a little bit of clarification there, and you'll have lettuce on top of that. Then you'll have hot potato waffles on that. Look them up if you haven't tried them. They're really good. Do them in the toaster. You can do them other ways, but do them in the toaster. It's the best way to do them. And put them on top of that. Then you have like your cheese and then top layer of bread. And it's just, you layer it just right. Then the heat from the waffles kind of just, it goes through and it melts the butter. And it's absolutely delicious. And as I'm talking about this very unhealthy sandwich, my Fitbit just buzzed, suggesting that you need to move and stop talking about unhealthy sandwiches. How rude. Okay, anyway, making myself even more hungry. So what are some of your favorites? You don't have to list like hot, cold, sweet, whatever. Just what are some of your favorites? Leave your sandwiches in a comment in the description and I'll eat them later. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening. And take very good care of yourself.